but we will do our best.
Everybody
Okay.
here will be very interested.
All right, so just by way of introduction, my name is Capri Snap. I'm the Medicaid director, and then Tina Bay is also on, who's our developmental disabilities director of that division. And so I'll go through the slides, but certainly feel free to stop me and ask questions of myself or Tina. And then please also know that this plan includes our aging division as well. And also our children's waivers that are in medical services, which would be the autism waiver and the medically fragile waiver, and also the 1915I waiver. Because of course, most of those waivers are based on home and community-based services. And happy, Dan, to provide these slides at any time. So just as a reminder where we are, we had back in the spring about 20 days to submit a plan about how the state would choose to expend about $31 million. CMS provided a letter to us that had general categories and suggested buckets by which you could look at, and you can see some of their suggestions: expanded eligibility, more services, capital investments, workforce, and addressing the social determinants of health. The state responded. There was conditional approval and full approval. We have eventually received full approval on our plan. And just about 2 weeks ago, they extended the date. Originally, we had until 2024 to spend those dollars, and now they've extended that date due to some information I think they received from lobbyist advocacy agencies and states. So this is from CMS website. They took the additional spending across all states and estimated that it's about $2,600 more. And again, this is looking at beneficiaries that primarily receive home and community-based services. Every state thus far has submitted a plan. There's a couple I looked online the other day that are still conditional, but for the most part, they're approved, and it's over $25 billion across all states. So this is significant investment in home and community-based, certainly more than I've seen in the 20 years that I've done this work, and is long time coming. I think a lot of people were hoping for this type of investment for quite some time. So you can see our North Dakota spending plan. We're going to walk through these 4 buckets, not only to explain where we portioned the money, but also giving you some examples about dollars that have already been spent. And you can see our biggest bucket is the workforce bucket. So 50% of the dollars we earmarked for recruitment and retention bonuses, startup grants for new service providers, and consultants to help revise the training program. And that's definitely going to be on the aging side. We need to take a look at the whole training program we have for qualified service providers or direct service providers. To date, actually this is June 2022, we've given out $3.3 million in retention and recruitment incentives to agencies providing those direct care services. You can see on the QSP side, we gave out $27,000 or so in recruitment and $170,000 in retention bonuses. And then on the IDD side, about $96,000 in recruitment and a little over $3 million in retention. And I'm going to stop at the end of this slide to see if we have any questions about the workforce. We're finalizing details of a non-agency recruitment and retention incentive program for individual QSPs. You can see what went out already was around agency QSPs. And finalizing grant application that can support both new and existing HCBS service providers who want to expand their delivery services. And then finally, we did put out a letter of intent to see if anyone wanted to become a PACE provider. We do have one PACE provider in the state. They operate in several areas, but we really wanted to try to expand that footprint of the PACE program, and we did get one respondent to that letter of intent. Tina, any thoughts that you have or any comments you want to have on the retention and recruitment incentives, particularly on the 3.1 million or so that have gone out for IDD?
No, right now we have not collected any data from our providers. I mean, we do have plans to try and get some data from all of them that have done this, the recruitment and retention, just to see what are they seeing. Are they seeing that it's helped? I think there's been providers, we gave them the flexibility to really look at how they wanted to structure. We set a limit for like the retention was up to $2,100. Per employee, and providers have done a variety of things. Some have given the full 2,100 right away. Some have staggered it. We've seen the requests come in for 500 here and then another 1,000 or something. So we're letting providers do that. And at some point here, we are going to come back and ask them to help us give us some of that information of have they seen it? Has it done anything? And I think that's what's going to be important when we look at our legislature and communicating, having some of that information to know if this has helped our workforce crisis.
Tina, I know that some of the people on the call do self-direct services for themselves or a loved one. I'm just wondering, is there a time frame for the details on the non-agency incentive program?
The letters, what they should be looking for within probably the next 3 to 4 weeks, a letter should be going out to all of our individual QSPs and our employees that are self-directing. They should get a letter. They'll be getting a letter from the department that explains the program, and also then is going to require them to opt in to make that decision whether they want to, because it will have tax implications for them. It'll be counted as income. And once we receive that information back, then we're going to start processing those payments, and they won't have to do anything else once they opt in. We will take care of the rest of the work as long as they have a qualifying service. As long as they provided a qualifying service during that quarter, they'll be eligible to receive the retention then.
Okay, and we have a couple of questions in the chat. Veronica, do you want to go first?
Sure. My question is about if you can kind of explain how this ARPA investment in workforce for retention recruitment is maybe working along with or supplementing the funding that was passed in the special session of about 2.5 million for DD providers for retention. Are these kind of cooperative efforts? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, the 2.5 million, I think at timing of everything, I don't think some of our plans of what was going to be, what we were going to be using our ARPA funding was out there. And so I know that when the providers requested that 2.5, it was just a way to get some retention out there for their staff. What we've done, because we've been able to use so much of our ARPA funding, we are using the 2.5 for our ICF programs. So to be able to give that retention and recruitment to our intermediate care facilities.
And does that take care of your question, Brittany? Because I know that you also had your hand up.
I was going to type it, but now I'll ask. On that same note, with the self-directed and the individual QSPs, was there reasoning that you can discuss why the individual QSPs and the self-directed services may not have been included in your initial R&R bonus incentives?
There's just a different process with them. Oh, go ahead.
It's a different process. It's a different process. It's a workload issue for us. So to stagger it out, one thing is we didn't know how many people were going to take us up. We want as many people as possible, but it's a workload issue and it's a different process. And Tina, you can talk a little bit about why it's slightly different. Obviously, one goes through an agency and one goes through individuals. But for example, as we go through the individual QSPs, we'll have a high volume of calls related to that. So we have to stagger the work.
Yeah.
But Tina,
and on that, I was going to point out the question too. You mentioned the individuals, the QSPs receiving the notifications and the information about this, but with the self-directed, are you sending notifications to those listed as employees or the employers or both?
We're going to be doing both, Brittany. We will send out a letter to the individual employee. So they're going to receive that letter saying, hey, do you want to receive this incentive? And then we're going to it's more of an informational letter going out to the families. Just to say, hey, just so you're aware that your caregiver is going to be offered this incentive, but the family will not have to do anything. It's going to be up to the employee to respond back to us and to let us know that they'd like to receive that incentive.
how does that work on the recruitment side versus the retention bonus then?
There is actually only going to be a retention bonus for the non-agency.
Can you, I guess, expand on that?
It'll be up to $2,100 for the retention. And so we are looking at paying it out over 4 quarters. So it'll be $525 per quarter that they'll be eligible as long as they provided a qualifying service. And it's based on employee, not family. So if they worked for 3 different families, they'll get it only one time.
Okay, I guess I was just looking for more along the lines of incentive versus, or the recruitment versus retention, and why this population wouldn't be eligible to tap into the recruitment because the workforce numbers are just as much a struggle on that end, and it's still that bulk home and community-based service.
Yeah, we can take that information back, Brittany. You know, the program we were set it up to do the retention, and we can take that back. And if we still have funds available, I think after we look at, you know, all of this money, we're trying to reach everybody the most that we can. So we can take a look as a recommendation.
Any more questions, Dan, you see in the chat, or? Because I can't see hands up while my screen is doing this. I'll just be
My apologies.
honest.
No, there are no further questions that I can see in the chat. Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, you're good to go.
Okay, so 21% of the funding towards new services or pilot programs. And here's a couple of examples: flexible transition supports, rate innovations for qualified service providers, and in-home consultation for our clients that have behavioral needs. And you can see these are 3 that we've made some progress on. We've contracted with our actuarial firm. They're going to do a rate analysis of all QSP and home and community-based rates. That's across all different types of waivers, or all the waivers that we have. And part of that is because of the feedback that we received about some of the services pay differently across the different waivers. Sometimes the units are calculated differently. And we asked them to look across states, across peer states, to look at where our rates sit. We asked them to pay specific attention on high need service types. And so we have completed that contract amendment with our actuarial firm. It's the same firm that calculates the IDD rates, and we have a kickoff call coming up on the HCBS rate side. Second, increased access to flexible transition funding available through Money Follows the Person infrastructure. Specific questions on this one, Tina and I can try, but these are more appropriate for Nancy. I know yesterday we had a call where Nancy talked about some of the services that they're looking at transition supports that typically Medicaid may or may not pay for. They're trying to be as flexible as possible in covering as much as they can. The last dot point is about increased investment in transition supports, coordinated services delivered via the CIL. So again, about Money Follows the Person infrastructure. So again, if you have questions, we will do our best. And if not, we can take some of those back to Nancy.
Caprice, this is Jake. I'm on the call as well in case someone does.
Oh, good. Perfect. Well, then perfect. I wasn't sure if you would be. And just to note, you know, again, if we are doing new services, we're trying very hard to figure out how to evaluate the effectiveness of some of these. And so that's where you see where it says new services and pilot programs. 15% of the dollars earmarked for transitions provide family care option to incentivize transitions from life skills and transition, enhance community supports to